What will you do if the one person who once broke your heart was suddenly invited to laugh at your pain on the very day meant to steal your happiness? In the heart of Abuja's Wuse 2, preparations buzzed like electricity. The wedding of the year was about to take place. Expensive cars lined the street near the glossy white event center, its marble entrance draped with cascading flowers in soft flush and gold. Guests whispered excitedly about the bride, Amara Okafor, the elegant banker whose rise in life had been as swift as it was dazzling. She was marrying Chikimadu, a wealthy oil magnate's son, and the celebration promised no expense spent. But behind the glittering facade of designers' gowns, champagne towers, and smiling ushers, there was a hidden scheme, one whispered only among Amara's closest friends. She had done something bold, even cruel. She had sent a personal invitation to her ex, Obinna Uwanchukwu, the man she had once loved deeply, but who had left her in what she described as the most humiliating breakup of her life. Her bridesmaid warned her, Amara, why bring him here? Weddings are for peace, not war. One whispered as they pinned her lace veil. But Amara's eyes, sharp and shimmering with defiance, flashed in the mirror. I want him to see me now, she said, adjusting her diamond necklace. I want him to know he lost the best thing that ever happened to him. Let him sit there, silent, watching me become someone else's queen. To Amara, it wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a stage, a final act of revenge, dressed up in lace and pearls. The irony. No one knew what Obinna would do. The man had vanished from her life 3 years earlier, leaving only unanswered questions and a trail of rumors. Some said he had gone bankrupt. Others whispered about a scandal at his former company. A few even claimed he had moved abroad in shame. But as the soft hum of violin music filled the decorated hall, all eyes would soon find out the truth. And that was the danger Amara didn't calculate, because sometimes when you try to mock the past shows up carrying a weight far heavier than your pride can bear. The doors to the wedding hall were about to open. The scent of roses filled the air. The cameras were ready. Amara smiled, thinking she had the upper hand. But the city of Abuja was about to witness a drama no invitation card could ever contain. Would you like to know what happens when Obinna actually walks in? If you are enjoying this suspenseful wedding twist already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next shocking event. Long before Amara Okafor became the radiant bride everyone admired, she was just a young woman chasing dreams in the bustling street of Abuja. Her childhood wasn't guided in wealth. She grew up in Garki, in a modest 2-bedroom flat where her mother sold fabrics in Wuse Market and her father drove a taxi. Money was always tight, but Amara had one weapon, her brilliance. She was the first in her family to attend university, studying economics at the University of Abuja. It was there she first met Obinna Uwanchukwu. He was older, confident, and worked at a rising tech firm. To Amara, Obinna was the definition of success, a man who seemed to know where he was going, with the charm to light up any room. He wooed her with late-night drives along Jabi Lake, expensive dinners she had never known before, and promises that made her believe her future was secured. Her friends warned her back then too. Men like Obinna, they love fast, but they live faster. Her roommate had whispered. Amara only laughed. You don't understand. He sees me, really sees me. He says I'm the woman he wants to build his empire with. But love, in its sweetest form, can sometimes be the most dangerous disguise. Obinna left without warning, one Hamatan morning. He didn't call, didn't write, didn't even give her the dignity of an explanation. All Amara received was a short text. "I'm sorry, but this is goodbye." She never heard his voice again. For weeks, she couldn't eat. She would sit by her hostel window, clutching her phone, replying his last message, hoping for a follow-up that never came. That betrayal burned her like acid, and in its place, fueled a fire she carried into her career. She graduated with top honors, landed a job at one of Abuja's leading banks, and clawed her way up. Fueled by one vow, never again would anyone make her feel small. That vow led her here, to this hall, to this day, to this moment where she would prove to the world and to herself that she had won. She wasn't the abandoned girl anymore. She was Amara Madu, soon to be wife of wealthy, elegance, and influence. And yet, as the bridal makeup artist put the finishing touches on her lips, Amara caught her reflection in the mirror and hesitated for a moment. Behind the sparkle of her diamond necklace, behind the perfectly fitted lace gown, a shadow of that heartbroken girl still stared back. The doors to the wedding hall opened wider. Guests were taking their seats. Her bridesmaids were adjusting their gele and whispering prayers. Somewhere in that crowd, Obina's chair was waiting. But what kind of man would sit in it? The ghost of her past, or something she wasn't ready for? The wedding hall at Transcorp Hilton, Abuja, gleamed under chandeliers that sparkled like 1,000 stars. Rows of white and gold chairs stretched neatly across the polished floor, each decorated with silk ribbons. Waiters in crisp uniform floated between tables, balancing trays of champagne flutes. But beneath the elegance, a low hum stirred the whispers of the guests. "Do you know who she used to date?" A woman in a squint gown leaned toward her friend, fanning herself slowly. "Obina, right? That tech guy who disappeared. I heard he lost everything." The friend replied, lowering her voice. Imagine inviting him here. What was Amara thinking? On another table, two older men in agbadas exchanged glances. One muttered, sipping his palm wine. "Pride is dangerous. To use a wedding day to settle scores. It never ends well." The other chuckled lightly. "Still, it will be interesting to watch. Abuja loves a good scandal." Even the younger girls had caught the scent of drama. A group of bridesmaids' cousins whispered among themselves, giggling nervously. They say the bride invited her ex herself. "Can you imagine?" "Who does that?" one said. "Ah, Abuja girls, always proving a point." Another laughed, though her eyes darted towards the door, as though expecting fireworks. Meanwhile, Chike, the groom, remained blissful, unaware of the storm Amara had brewed. Standing tall in his tailored white tuxedo, he moved between relatives, greeting them with his trademark charm. To him, this was the happiest day of his life. He had no idea his bride had planted a ghost in the middle of their celebration. As the choir began a soft hymn, the ushers at the back doors exchanged curious looks, the kind of looks that spread through a hall like a secret wind. Heads began to turn, whispers grew louder, and eyes flickered toward the grand entrance. Something, or rather someone, was about to walk in. And though no one had yet seen his face, the atmosphere shifted, charged like the air before a storm. The bride's secret invitation was about to bear fruit, but was it sweet victory she had prepared for herself or poison? Obina Nwachukwu, he stepped in slowly, dressed not in the flashy agbada many expected, but in a simple, well-fitted navy blue shirt. His hair was neatly cut, his beard trimmed, and his posture calm. If the years had worn him down, they had also carved him sharper, steadier. He wasn't the broken man people had gossiped about. He was composed, self-assured, and his very presence seemed to silence the whisper that had burst just moments before. Gasps rippled through the hall. Is that really him? Someone muttered. He looks different. Better than before, Seth. Another whispered, her voice tinged with reluctant admiration. Even the men in Agbadas, who had mocked earlier, exchanged uneasy glances. Obina did not walk like a guest arriving late. He walked like a man who belonged, who had nothing to prove, yet everything to reveal. At the far end of the hall, Amara froze in the bridal room doorway. At the far end of the hall, Amara froze in the bridal room doorway, watching from a crack as her bridesmaid adjusted her gown. Her heart clenched. This was not the image she had imagined. She expected a humble, broken man limping in shame, swallowed by the grandeur of her wedding. Instead, he looked whole, maybe even greater than the man who once left her shattered. One bridesmaid leaned towards her and whispered, Amara, he looks strong. Are you sure about this? Amara's jaw tightened, her pride refusing to bend. He came. That's all that matters. Now let him sit there and watch me shine. But already, Obina's presence had unsettled the room. Every glance, every harsh voice turned towards him. And as he calmly took a seat near the middle row, folding his hands loosely, there was an air of mystery about him. What story was hidden behind those steady eyes? The bride thought she had scripted today's drama, but with one step inside, Obina had quietly taken the pen. And soon, everyone in Abuja would realize this wedding was no longer about a union, it was about a reckoning. Amara tried to steady her breathing as the choir's hymn lingered through the hall. She was supposed to be glowing, radiant, the perfect bride stepping into her new life. But every time she glanced through the crack of the bridal room door, her eyes betrayed her, always finding him, Obina. Why did he have to sit so calmly? As though nothing had ever happened. Why wasn't he sweating with shame, avoiding eye contact like she had imagined? Instead, his composure pierced her like a knife, dragging her back into the very memories she had buried beneath lace and diamonds. She remembered the night he first kissed her forehead after exam at Uni Abuja, whispering, with you, Amara, the world feels possible. She remembered the evenings when they shared suya at Garki Market, laughing like they had no worries. The boyish grin, the way he listened to her dreams as though they were already his own. But then came the morning he vanished. The unanswered calls, the silence that screamed louder than betrayal itself. She remembered collapsing on her hostel bed, clenching her chest as though her heart had physically cracked. She remembered hiding from friends, too ashamed to explain why she was no longer smiling. She remembered vowing to herself, never again, never again will a man undo me. And yet, here he was, sitting among her guests, breathing in the air of her wedding, breathing in her victory. Her bridesmaid Chioma touched her hand gently. Amara, you are trembling. Do you regret inviting him? Amara snapped her hand away, her voice sharp but trembling. No, he deserves to see me like this. He deserves to feel what I felt. But the truth, buried deep inside her, was different. His steady eyes unsettled her not because of revenge, but because a small, stubborn part of her heart still remembered the man who once held her so gently. Out in the hall, the guests had shifted their attention back to the ceremony, but not Amara. For her, the wedding had turned into a battlefield. Each step down this aisle would not just be a walk toward her groom, Chiki. It would be a walk past the ghost of her past, the man who broke her, yet somehow still had power over her thoughts. Her makeup artist whispered, Madam, it's time. Amara straightened her gown, lifted her veil, and forced a smile, but inside, Her heart thundered with a single question. Was she walking into the greatest triumph or her deepest undoing? The soft notes of the violin swelled, signaling the bride's entrance. Guests rose to their feet, heads sounding in unison. The door swung open and Amara stepped forward, radiant in her ivory lace gown, the long veil trailing like a river of light behind her. Cameras flashed, capturing her every move. But to Amara, the eyes felt unbearably long. Each step echoed like a drumbeat, her heart pounding against her ribs. She smiled, but it was a strange smile, one that hid the storm within. For though hundreds of eyes admire her, only one pair of eyes seemed to exist, Obina's. He didn't move, didn't shift in his seat. He just watched, not with mockery, not with longing, not even with regret. His gaze was steady, unreadable, as though he were measuring her, measuring the life she had built since he left. Amara tried to look away, focusing on Chike at the altar, his face beaming with joy, his eyes shining with the innocence of a man in love. He had no idea that his bride's chest was tightening, that her fingers trembled slightly as they clutched her bouquet. Whispers dead again in rows. See how she looked at him. Did you notice her pause? I hope this won't spoil today. Her mother, seated near the front, gave her a small nod of encouragement, but even that comfort was not enough to drown the silent war raging inside Amara. She told herself this was the moment Obina would finally feel small, watching her ascend to a life he could never offer. Yet, the unsettling truth was clearer with every step. She was the one feeling small, crushed under his calm presence, his unflinching eyes. By the time she reached Chike's side and placed her hands in his, the ceremony had shifted. The guests smiled and clapped. The prince raised his voice in prayer, but beneath the lace and laughter, a new tension simmered. The wedding was no longer just about vows and rings. It had become a silent confrontation between the past and the present, one that could not stay hidden for long. And as Amara forced her lips into another smile, she wondered, was she marrying Chike today, or was she still in some dark corner of her heart, bound to Obina? The priest's voice rang clear, solemn and commanding. Marriage is a covenant, not to be entered lightly, but with reverence and honor. Guests nodded along, their faces glowing with joy, some recording with their phones, others whispering prayers. On the surface, it was everything a dream wedding should be, but beneath the polished surface, something fragile was beginning to crack. Amara stood before Chike, her hand resting lightly in his. He gazed at her with unshakable devotion. A wide smile etched across his face. To him, this was the happiest day of his life. To her, it was supposed to be her ultimate triumph. Yet, when the priest asked her to repeat after him, Amara's voice fluttered for the previous moment. I, Amara, take you, Chike. Her words cut, not long enough for the average guest to notice, but long enough for those who knew her well. Her cousin shifted in her seat. Her bridesmaid, Chioma, bit her lip. Even her mother's smile dimmed, just a little. And Obinna, he didn't flinch. He didn't smirk. He simply sat there watching her like a man who knew something no one else in the hall could see. Whispers swelled through the crowd like an invisible wind. Why did she hesitate? Was that nerve or something else? Did you see her glance toward that man in the middle row? The tension spread quickly, infecting even the groom. For the first time, Chike's smile wavered. He squeezed Amara's hand gently, searching her eyes. Are you all right? He whispered, his voice low enough for only her to hear. Amara forced a smile, nodding quickly. I'm fine, she lied. But her eyes betrayed her again, flickering toward Obinna, who remained as calm as a still lake. That tiny glass did not go unnoticed. A woman in the second row gasped quietly. A young man leaned forward, whispering to his neighbor. She looked at him. Did you see that? By the time the priest handed over the rings, the atmosphere in the grand Abuja hall had shifted. Beneath the music, beneath the prayers, beneath the applause, suspicion had taken root. And though no one dared to say it aloud, the question hung heavy in the air. Who truly held Amara's heart in that moment? The man standing at the altar, or the one sitting silently among the guests? Obinna sat still in the middle row, hands folded, his gaze never wavering. To the casual eye, he looked composed, perhaps even indifferent, but inside, every word of the vows pierced him like a slow, deliberate blade. He remembered the girl she once was, the Amara who laughed freely over bowls of pepper soup in a dingy roadside joint, who dreamed aloud about lifting her family out of poverty. He remembered holding her hand under the moonlight by Jabi Lake, promising her forever, and he remembered the day he broke that promise. What no one knew in that hall was that his disappearance had not been born of cruelty, but of shame. 3 years ago, Obinna had been framed in a financial scandal at his tech firm. Overnight, everything collapsed. His job, his reputation, his accounts frozen. He couldn't drag Amara into the wreckage, so he left. The coward's way out, but to him, it felt like the only way to protect her. He had built himself back slowly, painfully. A new job, new stability, a life without her. Yet, when the cream-colored wedding invitation landed in his hands, it felt like fate mocking him. He nearly tore it in half, but something inside whispered, "Go, face what you ran from." And now here he was, watching her marry another man. Yet there was something in Amara's eyes, something the rest of the room could not read. She spoke the words of commitment, but her gaze lingered too long. Her smile trembled at the edges, and Obinna, more than anyone, knew that look. He had seen it before, on the day she first told him she loved him. The whispers in the hall swelled, but Obinna barely heard them. His chest tightened as he realized the weight of his choice to return. He hadn't come to mock. He hadn't come to beg. He had come to witness. But what he was witnessing now was not peace. It was a woman at war with herself. Obinna lowered his head for a moment, whispering under his breath, unheard by anyone else. "Amara, did you ever truly heal? Or did I break something that can never be mended?" The priest lifted his hands, preparing to declare the couple husband and wife. Applause swelled, but Obinna's mind was already racing, because in Amara's trembling voice and stolen glances, he recognized something dangerous. This wedding was not built on love, it was built on pride, and anything built on pride was destined to shatter. The priest's voice thundered through the microphone, clear and final. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." The hall erupted in applause, guests rising to their feet, cameras raised high, phones flashing like starlight. Chike leaned in with a proud smile, eager to seal his vow with a kiss that would mark the beginning of forever. But Amara's body betrayed her. Her hands trembled against the bouquet. Her chest heaved as though the walls of the hall were closing in. She saw Chike's lips draw closer, but in her mind's eye, it wasn't her groom standing before her. It was Obinna. The weight of his silent gaze from the middle row pressed against her like an invisible hand. And then it happened. Just as Chike's lips brushed hers, Amara faltered, her eyes wide and searching, flickered towards the crowd, toward him. For the briefest, unforgivable moment, she looked past her groom and locked eyes with Obinna. The hall froze. The kiss landed, but it was broken, hesitant, shallow, stained by the unmistakable pulse. Gasps rippled like a wave. Someone dropped their drink at the back. A bridesmaid's hand flew to her mouth. Even the priest's smile faltered, and Chike felt it, the hesitation, the stiffness of her lips, the way her body leaned away rather than in. He pulled back slightly, his brows furrowing, his voice low and trembling. Amara, why did you look away? The whispers were no longer whispers, they were daggers flying through the air. She looked at another man during the kiss. Did you see that? God forbid. Which man? Which man? That one, middle row. Him. Every head turned. All eyes found Obina, who sat still, his face unreadable, his silence louder than thunder. Amara's cheek burned beneath her veil, her heart slamming like a drum. She hadn't meant for her secret war to spill into the open, but it was too late. The perfect wedding facade had cracked, and through it the truth glimmered raw, dangerous and undeniable. And in that hall, filled with Abuja's finest, the unthinkable question rose, whispered from table to table, until it felt like the very walls were asking, was the bride still in love with her ex? The applause had died too quickly. What should have been the happiest moment of Chike and Amara's life had soared into an uneasy silence, punctured only by scattered claps and the low hum of whispers that refused to die down. The priest tried to recover, forcing a smile, but the damage was done. The hall was unsettled. By the time the reception began, the tension had taken like Hamatan dust. The live band played high life music. The waiters served steaming plates of jollof and peppered goat meat, but the usual joy of a Nigerian wedding reception was missing. Instead, guests leaned close at their tables, their voices sharp with scandal. She looked at him, I swear. No bride behaves that way unless her heart is divided. Ha! Imagine disgracing your husband on the altar in front of Abuja society. The dance floor opened and Amara and Chike stepped forward for their first dance as husband and wife. Cameras circled them, capturing the every move. Chike smiled for the crowd, but his grip on Amara's waist was tight, too tight. His whispered words slipped through his clenched jaw. Amara, why did you look at him? Tell me now. She forced a smile. Her voice brittled beneath the music. Chike, not here, please. Everyone is watching. Yes, they are. He shot back, his eyes burning, and they saw you hesitate. The crowd noticed the stiffness between them. Some murmured, others pointed, and then, like fire catching on dry grass, the attention shifted. Heads turned towards the middle row, towards the man who sat still watching, Obinna. There, that's him. A woman hissed, that is the ex. Ah, and he just sat through the vows. Old man. Or foolish, another countered. The whispers grew bolder, louder, no longer content to stay hidden. Within minutes, the band's music was competing with murmurs that refused to be silent. Guests cranked their necks, trying to glimpse the man who had somehow stolen the spotlight from the groom himself. And then, as though the tension had reached its boiling point, one of Chike's uncle, already flushed from palm wine, stood up and pointed directly at Obinna. You, he barked. Why are you here? Why are you looking at another man's wife like that? The hall gasped, cameras swiveled. Every eye fell on Obinna. He didn't rise, he didn't flinch. He simply looked back at the uncle. His voice calm, steady, but carrying enough weight to silence the band for a moment. I was invited. The single sentence struck the hall like lightning. Gasps, murmurs, shouts followed. Guests twisted towards the bride, their faces a mixture of shock and accusation. Invited? By who? Amara? Amara's legs weakened. Her groom's hand tightened on her waist, his voice sharp with disbelief. Amara, is it true? You invited him? The music faltered, the dance stopped, and in that glittering Abuja hall, what was meant to be a celebration of love had turned into a public reckoning, and Amara knew there was no hiding anymore. The wedding hall erupted. Voices rose. People stood, and the MC struggled in vain to calm the crowd. The shimmering chandeliers above seemed to tremble with the weight of chaos. Amara stood frozen in the center of it all. Her hand limp in Chike's. She wanted to speak, to explain, but the storm of whispers had swallowed too large. And then Obina rose. Slowly, deliberately, he stood from his seat, his tall frame commanding the attention of every restless guest. The hall, once noisy, fell into an air hush as though even the air had been snatched away. His eyes never left Chike. You ask why I am here. You demand to know why she looked at me that way. Chike's jaw tightened. Yes, tell me. Tell all of us. Obina's lips curved, not in a smile, but in something closer to pity. His voice carried effortlessly, clear and unwavering, slicing through the silence. Because Amara's heart has never been the only thing tied to me. Her past, your marriage, your life, are not what you think they are. Gasps rippled through the hall. The priest lowered his Bible, visibly shaking. What are you talking about? Chike backed. His grip on Amara's wrist now desperate, almost pleading. Obina's gaze dropped to Amara, softening for a fleeting moment. Then he faced the crowd again. I didn't come here to destroy this union. I came here because the truth was already waiting to destroy it. A woman in the front row whispered, What truth? And the whole collectively leaned forward. Obina drew in a breath. Chike, he said. Each word heavy, deliberate, unmerciful. Amara was mine long before she was yours, but it is not her betrayal that should worry you. It is yours. The hall broke into stunned murmurs. Chike's face went pale, the accusation striking him like a blow. What are you saying? He snapped, his voice cracking. Obina's eyes sharpened. Tell them, Chike. Tell them about the deal, about how you built your empire on a foundation soaked in deceit. Deceit that tied you to me, whether you admit it or not. The crowd gasped again. Cameras flashed. Even the band members lowered their instruments, unable to look away. And there it was, the seed of scandal planted in the open. This wasn't just a love triangle. This was betrayal woven into the very fabric of Chike's wealth, his reputation, his marriage. And now the whole world was watching it unravel. If this moment gave you chills, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happened next in part 2.